Arizona, the saying goes like this: everything in the desert is trying to kill you. One of the biggest threats here is invisible, a potentially deadly fungus hiding in the dirt.
I suppose it's everywhere. It's super easy to inhale. That's kind of a scary thing.
Jesse Hebert thinks he got infected soon after moving to Arizona a few years ago because not long after, strange things started happening in his body.
It was simply physical exhaustion. Almost inexplicably, I felt like I hadn't eaten in like 2 or 3 days.
27 years old at the time, Hebert was caught off guard by the extreme fatigue. He also started coughing up blood.
At first I was like kind of unnerved, and then when I started thinking, oh, I might be dealing with a cancer or something, I got actually pretty terrified.
Doctors told him he had valley fever, the disease caused by coccidioides, or cocci. That fungus lives in the dirt, and people can inhale it through windswept desert dust. It infects at least 20,000 Americans each year, and thanks to climate change, it's spreading. On the dusty trails of Granite Mountain Trailhead in Scottsdale, Arizona, this research team is trying to track it down by collecting soil samples.
If we're going to a site that we don't know is positive and we're going to a new site, we're kind of just shooting in the dark.
Marika Ramsey is a research associate at Northern Arizona University.
So we're going to be finding a spot now. Like, do you have a spot in mind?
I do have one right over here. It's next to some of the restoration plots. I did sample this back in, I believe it was 2021 as well as 2022. Okay. So something like this is what we look for.
Ramsey says studies suggest a good spot to check for the cocci fungus are rodent burrows, where the soil has already been disturbed. She puts on protective gear to avoid breathing in any dust. Then the method to actually collect the dirt is nothing fancy, just old spoons and sample cups.
Usually this is kind of like the amount that we get, because we don't need a whole lot of soil for our extraction.
At new sampling sites, teams like this can be here for a couple of hours, and sometimes they'll take up to 100 of those tiny cups of soil just to try and find even one sample of the valley fever fungus.
We later joined Ramsey back on campus and put on our own protective gear before heading to the lab.
So how did collections go yesterday?
It went really well in the morning.
Here, Ramsey and other scientists sift through the soil samples to find fungal spores, all under the watchful eye of longtime valley fever researcher Bridget Barker. She says work to better understand the cocci fungus is crucial as infection rates are rising while its range is expanding.
With climate change potentially impacting more and more people across the western United States, potentially even into Canada.
One recent study used climate projections to model the range of valley fever in the decades ahead. It found rising temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns could allow the fungus to keep spreading north, all the way to the Canadian border before the end of the century.
As you increase temperatures in the environment, you sort of pre-adapt these infectious diseases to being able to tolerate higher and higher temperatures.
This is what the fungus looks like on a petri dish.
If we could see into the soil and actually observe the organism growing, we'd see these fine white threads.
And when it's inhaled, it causes chaos. Each spore inflates like a beach ball filled with smaller ping pong balls. Once the large spheres rupture, the smaller balls are released, then the cycle repeats over and over again, aggravating the lungs, leading to fatigue, fever, and other flu-like symptoms, sometimes for months on end. In other cases, it spreads through the body, causing infections that can last a lifetime.
Once it moves beyond the lungs, then you're in for a very rocky ride.
That's a feeling Dr. Fariba Donovan's patient Renee Benoit knows well. We met them both at the aptly named Valley Fever Center for Excellence in Tucson.
Some people, it disseminates and they get worse. Some people, it kills them.
While Benoit has been living with this fungus inside her body for more than a decade.
I know that I have valley fever still in my lungs and that it isn't cured.
It could reactivate, grow, and perhaps get into your bloodstream, and God forbid get into lung and brain and cause meningitis, can go into skin, cause a skin infection.
It took time for Benoit to get a proper diagnosis, since even in Arizona, frontline medical teams aren't always familiar with valley fever. Her infection is now under control through antifungal treatments, but
treatment for life means several pills a day, every day for life.
Dr. Donovan says her team's goals are educating more clinicians and developing vaccines to prevent rare but life-threatening infections.
Unfortunately, those cases get to us when it's already disseminated, when it's already in that complicated stage.
Hebert is grateful his case of valley fever was caught early. He took antifungal medications for 9 months and likely gained immunity to protect against another infection. But there's also a chance the fungus is still lurking inside his body.
Could it reoccur, or am I going to have lasting issues?
A concern more and more people could be facing in the years ahead from a health threat hiding right beneath their feet.